Hello, and welcome to Catholicism in the Car. My name is Parker Zerbal. All right, I want to talk about today how suffering is necessary for happiness. Now, the last two or so podcasts, we've talked about redemptive suffering from a Christian perspective and then also from just a purely natural or secularist perspective. But I want to flesh this out a little more. Our sufferings in life and how we deal with them are necessary for our happiness in this life. If we are constantly trying to run away from suffering, it will be a futile mission. It will be worthless. Suffering will find you wherever you are, in whatever situation you're in, whether you're rich, you're poor, you're middle class, whether you're religious, you're non-religious. And in certain ways, suffering can find people. It's certainly true that some people suffer more than others, depending on their circumstances. And this can sometimes be due to the person's own neglectfulness of either themselves or of others. So you can think of maybe drug addiction as an example of suffering brought on one by oneself to a certain extent. I mean, you choose the initial dope, you choose the initial hit. I'm probably showing how little I know about recreational drugs there. But I think it's important for people to understand this concept that you can never escape suffering. You can never escape suffering. Now, what do you do with that reality? You find ways to deal with suffering. Okay? Many people try to deal with their suffering by replacing it with pleasure. Now, what's interesting is that the way reality has been put together, I would say designed, is that when you have too much pleasure of one thing, it turns into suffering. So think about, let's take gluttony, for example. If you eat too much, you get a stomachache, or you throw up, or, something terrible happens. If you drink too much, you get drunk and hungover. And personally, I've never understood why people enjoy getting drunk. I can understand why you would want to get to the point of levity, where you're feeling pretty good, you're happy, but you still have control of your reason. I don't understand why people try to drink themselves into oblivion, except if they're trying to be in oblivion in a certain way in order to take away an amount of pain. So drinking is another good example of this, how too much pleasure can turn into pain, and does always turn into pain. This also happens in regard to sex. I think that's pretty obvious there. If you have too much sex, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Not just by the immediate physical effects of that, but also because of introducing yourselves to various forms of diseases. And I think, as a side note, and I've mentioned this before, but it's fascinating how what Christianity and what most religions would consider sinful, they have natural negative consequences to them. Too much food, you get sick. Too much sex, you get sick. Too much pride, you'll eventually fall, and people begin to hate you, which is what people don't want. That's not the reason why people are prideful. You end up isolating yourself when you get so prideful, and people don't like to be around you. Those are just a few examples. So if we take this concept that suffering is inescapable, in this life at least, or if you don't believe in an afterlife, then suffering truly is inescapable. And you have all the more reason to figure out a good way to try to avoid it that is productive and healthy for you. Too much drink, not productive and healthy. Too much sex, not productive and healthy. Too much food, not productive and healthy. Too much pride, not productive and healthy, or healthy. So, I think it really takes you just have to step back, and we can get into the nitty-gritty about, why are all these different points of morality right or wrong according to a Christian worldview versus a secularist worldview. But taking a step back and looking at just these general concepts of morality and what are the consequences of these actions. This is why the Catholic Church talks about natural law. That there are natural consequences for certain actions. Like, people don't talk about it like this very much, but nature will get you. Nature will punish you if you do not obey her laws. If you jump off a building, you're going to die, or at least get very severely injured. Because you can't defy gravity. If you try to ride a rocket to the moon and you get the chemistry wrong in the solution for the rocket, you're going to blow up and you're going to die. So nature rewards good behavior with safety and with moderate pleasures. Now, I'm not saying that this happens in every respect. Of course, there are always things that are outside of our control. Why do innocent people suffer? Why do the good suffer? Why do the good often suffer much worse than the bad? These are interesting questions that Christianity, I think in particular, has quite good answers to. But I'm talking just on this natural level here. There are consequences for your actions. And I think if we can move our culture back to an idea of even just pagan virtue, we'll be in a much better place than we are now. Instead of this hedonistic, pleasure-seeking culture, we can have one that at least values prudence, temperance, justice, and fortitude. At least those things. Now, how we hash them all out in the particulars, that's a different question. But living a life of natural virtue is the basis. And if you're a Christian listening to this, that's the same for you. A life of natural virtue is a basis for a life of supernatural virtue. You can't really have a life of supernatural virtue if those natural virtues are not founded well. This is why we talk about you need good human formation before you can have good spiritual formation. So, all right, thank you. Oh, real quick, please feel free to subscribe to any of my podcasts on any of the podcast players. Find me on YouTube. Please subscribe. Like me on Facebook, like the Catholicism Car channel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all there, Catholicism Car. And then I also have a Patreon account if you wish to support what I do at this podcast and this YouTube channel. And you can also support us on Anchor.fm. There's a support button there you click on. I also have links to all this on my website's support page at www.catholicisminthecar.com.